build your team will be a big factor in whether it succeeds. In this course, you'll learn about the stages of team development. You'll find out how to choose your team and how to use them to the best effect. You'll learn why and how to set team goals, as well as how to write team conduct guidelines that will set you up for success. All teams take time to come together, and the one you're leading will be no exception. Back in 1965, a man called Bruce Tuckman described the stages that teams go through as they come together. He talked about 5 stages of team development, and now they're sometimes known as Tuckman's stages. The first of these stages is forming. Maybe you've all known each other for years, or maybe you've just met, but this is the first time you're coming together as a team for this project. So start by working out rules and responsibilities. The team leader, that's you, has a crucial role to play in this stage. Your team is depending on you for guidance, so you need to see that everyone feels comfortable and knowledgeable about the project. You should explain the team's goals and outline the schedule, and make sure everybody's enthusiastic. Be positive. Tell everyone why the team will be successful and what you know it will accomplish. Next comes storming. People are figuring out their roles and splitting up tasks, and there can be conflict as they do. As team leader, your job is to smooth those waters. You should be open to every team member's input, encourage everyone to share their ideas, and help the team to define a shared vision. In the norming stage, your team has gelled a little more. Everyone's learning to focus on the goal and on what the team is trying to accomplish. But your role's still important. You need to help everyone feel confident they're doing a good job. Build their confidence by showing them they're on track to meeting their objectives. The fourth stage is performing. Your team members are in the thick of it now, dealing with complex tasks and working toward common goals. They're mostly able to sort out their own disagreements, but you still need to keep an eye on them. At this stage, you're acting mostly as a facilitator, scheduling meetings, mediating group discussions, and setting agendas, that sort of thing. But you also need to make sure you're watching the group dynamic. Sometimes, 1 or 2 strong members of a team can monopolize things, so you need to see that everyone feels involved and can share their ideas. Finally, you get to the adjourning stage. The project's winding down and your goals are within reach. After you've done what you set out to do, the team breaks up. You might think your job is over now, but it's not. It's good to hold a final meeting with the team where you all discuss things that worked well and things that didn't. It's also important to give feedback, both to the team as a whole and to each individual. Whatever you're trying to do, your team will look to their leader throughout all 5 stages. It's a big responsibility, but it's exciting too. Whether you're trying to win the Super Bowl or to make a best-selling app, your team is only as good as its members. If you choose those members well, you could end up with a team that runs itself. But if you don't, you might get members that will eventually ruin the project. It's your job to pick the right people to give your project the best chance of success. So how do you do that? Well, first, your team members need to have the right job-specific technical skills. They have to have the right expertise to get the job done right. For example, let's say you're making a logo for a client. Well then, your team members will need to have graphic design skills. Or if you're doing R&D in pharmaceuticals, your team members need to have laboratory and medical training. But knowing their stuff isn't enough. Your team members also need team readiness qualities. That means being able to collaborate and to communicate, being committed to the task and the team, being prepared to participate, and being solutions-oriented. Let's say you interview a possible team member, and you find she's already excited, looking for ways to contribute and thinking up solutions to problems that she anticipates. She's definitely a good fit. On the other hand, you might come across someone who's not interested in getting on with others and who foresees doom from the very beginning. You'd probably quickly decide that person's not team ready. Finally, you need to make sure your team members fit with the team culture. Different companies and teams have different organizational culture, and you need to see that each team member's personality matches up. For instance, maybe your team culture prioritizes punctuality and time management, so you won't want to choose someone who regularly turns up late for meetings. Or maybe you want creativity, or maybe it's leadership skills. So you need to assess each candidate carefully for those traits. As well as those 3 qualities, there are a few other things to watch out for. It's important to choose team members who are interested in the project. There's no point having people on your team who don't want to be there. You also need to pick members who provide diversity, so that you get different perspectives on the project. So don't just choose men with 20 years of experience. And finally, it's good to choose a mixture of innovators and traditional problem solvers. Innovators tend to be out-of-the-box thinkers, while traditional problem solvers can make hot-shot ideas work. A team can be more than the sum of its parts, but you have to get the parts right first. So choosing the best people will make sure you have the best possible team. One of the first tasks when you're building a team is to set team goals. Now, you could sit down and write these yourself, but in the long run, it will be much more helpful if you involve all your team's members by taking a collaborative approach. If you lead your team through the goal-setting process instead of dictating goals yourself, you'll find you gain several rewards. First off, involving everyone in setting goals will help to build a stronger team. When everyone's involved in establishing the goals, each person will be more committed to achieving them. They'll be more motivated, and they'll understand better what the goals mean for them personally. They'll feel more responsible for the project's success, and since they'll feel more of a personal stake in the project, they'll be happier in their work. They may also feel more comfortable with you as a leader because you'll be creating a cooperative atmosphere rather than a do-what-I-tell-you sort of environment. They'll know you value their input and have confidence in them, and they'll feel more like you understand and appreciate what they can do. All of this will make them happier with the project, with each other, and with you, their leader. Another reward of a collaborative approach is that it helps establish effective goals. You get the benefit of your team members' perspective, expertise, and insight, which is why you chose them for your team in the first place. Since each member knows what they're capable of, your goals will likely be more realistic and results-focused than they might have been if you'd set them all yourself. And because you're not writing all the goals yourself, you have more time to work with team members to improve them. And you'll have enough distance from the goals to better judge whether they'll work or not. Finally, taking part in the goal-writing process helps team members to grow professionally. Working together on these goals will help them to develop both their interpersonal and professional skills. They'll have to be able to put their ideas into clear and workable statements, and they'll have to negotiate to get their points across. A team won't get very far if it can't work together. So, as the team leader, you need to make sure all your team members are committed to achieving common goals, and the best way to do that is to let them help to set them. You've decided to work with your team to establish your team goals in a collaborative way, but you're not sure how to go about it. Won't it end up in a free-for-all when all the team members each put their 2 cents in about what they want to do? It doesn't have to if you follow these 4 steps. To begin, each team member, including you, should write goals. Ask your team members to write 3 goals. In writing them, use SMART criteria. And that doesn't just mean intelligent ones. SMART is an acronym that helps you define clear goals. S stands for specific. So describe the goal in detail and say exactly what you want to accomplish. M is for measurable. So make sure your goal is something that you can measure. A means attainable. Your goal should be challenging, but not unrealistic or overambitious. R is for results focused. So define the outcome you want. And T is for time-based. So make sure you include timelines for milestones and final completion. It's the difference between saying, for example, move all customers to the new system within the next year, and migrate all 960 customers, 80 each month, to the new shared services server in 1 year. The second goal is specific, measurable, attainable, results-focused, and time-based. SMART. The next step is to categorize goals by common theme. Post all your team's goals to a shared forum, maybe a website, maybe a whiteboard. Together, review the goals and look for common themes. Then, group them into categories. So, suppose your team has presented goals that include increase sales calls by 20% by month end, add 10 new clients by year end, and follow up on current sales leads by end of quarter. Those could all be grouped under sales. Third, you need to discuss the categories and clarify the goals. With your team, talk about the work done so far, and if anything needs to be improved, do it now. For instance, if a goal deals with customer service, you might move it from sales to support. Once you've agreed on the goals and categories, together choose the most important 3 or 4 goals in each category. The last step is to create a single goal for each category. Together, combine the most important 3 or 4 goals from each category into one goal. Work with the team to build consensus and make sure your goals stay SMART. For example, a publishing team has goals of reducing grammatical errors to 0 by month end, reducing spelling errors to 0 immediately, and reducing typographical errors to 0 by end of quarter. They combine them all to come up with one goal. Reduce grammatical, spelling, and typographical errors to 0 by month end. Now, you've created clear goals and you've done it together, so everyone will be motivated to achieve them. You've chosen good people for your team, but that's not enough. You need to make sure each person is assigned the role that fits them best. There's a process you can follow to see that everyone on your team is in the right place. First, you identify the tasks your team will perform. Think about the final deliverable or goal and work backward to identify all the component tasks you'll need to complete to reach that goal. One way of doing this is by using a work breakdown structure, also known as WBS. As you identify tasks, note down the key activities that are involved in them. That will help you to figure out who's best suited to them. So, for example, say you want to create a tourism guide. You can work backward to identify the project's major deliverables and add them to the WBS. They might be create stories, design guide, compile stories, print guide, and distribute guide. As you identify the component tasks of each major deliverable, you can add them to the WBS. You can also add the roles associated with each major deliverable. So, you might add the role writing lead to the task create stories and promotions planner to distribute guide. Now that you know what you need done, the next step is to identify the skills needed to do it. For instance, suppose one of the tasks is to monitor the project budget. To do that, someone would need to have accounting and information management skills. When you know what skills you need to identify team members' skills to find out who can do what. You could review team members' portfolios or resumes, or you could ask other managers and team leaders for input on their past performance. Talking to previous bosses also helps you learn more about the character of your team members. People who've been successful in the past will probably do it again, and people who have a good attitude will contribute to your team's success. Finally, you're ready to assign roles to team members. Use all the information you've collected in the first 3 steps to make your final choice. Here's an example. One of the tasks is to train team members to use proprietary software, and for that, you need someone with communication skills and expert knowledge. You've talked to previous team leaders, and they've told you Shoshana is great with people and extremely tech-savvy. So, you put her in charge of software training. With everyone in their proper place, your team is all set for success. Your team is made up of individuals, and they all need to learn to pull together. You can help them by establishing guidelines for team conduct early on in the team building process. When everybody knows what's expected, there's less room for misunderstanding. People will get along better and feel more responsible for shared success, and because of this, they'll be more productive. To establish clear guidelines, you can apply some basic criteria. First of all, write each guideline as one clear and concise sentence. State it in the imperative and make sure it's straightforward and easy to understand and to remember. For example, try this. When in meetings, it's key that you try to maintain respect for every team member and everyone attending whenever you can and it's appropriate. Do you even know what the message in that sentence was? Probably not. On the other hand, treat team members with respect at all times is clear and concise. Next, make sure all guidelines are stated in a positive way. Say what you want team members to do, not what you don't want them to do. This will encourage a positive team culture, and it's clearer too. So instead of saying, do not criticize team initiatives, you'd say, support all team initiatives. Finally, make sure each guideline is actionable. Actionable guidelines outline expected or acceptable behaviors and actions, but not emotions or attitudes. So, guidelines might cover how to interact in meetings or how to respond to feedback, but they shouldn't define how people should feel. You could have a guideline that said, listen without interrupting while receiving feedback. That's actionable. But suppose you were to say, don't be annoyed while receiving feedback. That's not actionable because it dictates how someone should feel and they might not be able to control that. Never mind the fact that it's not really your place to tell them how to feel. It's a good idea to involve team members in coming up with the guidelines, to give them a stake in the process, and to make sure they don't feel criticized or dictated to. If the guidelines are going to work, everybody has to follow them. And allowing team members to help you establish them makes it more likely they'll be committed to standing by them. When everybody's on the same page about what's required, that's one less thing standing between your team and its goals. Setting a code of conduct can help your team perform at its best. Every team is unique, and you'll have different guidelines depending on your business area and on the personalities in the team. But guidelines are good for any team. You'll definitely want to establish guidelines around etiquette for meetings. Otherwise, meetings can get off track and waste time. The first thing here is attendance. If the people who need to be there aren't, decisions can't be made. So one example guideline might be attend all team meetings. Interruptions can be another time waster, so you might come up with a guideline such as turn off cell phones during team meetings. If you're dealing with confidential material in meetings, you'll have to address that. For instance, in a guideline such as keep confidential information within the team, and you want to make sure meetings focus on action rather than endless talking. So you might say, at team meetings, focus on moving team actions forward. The next type of guideline that you'll need involves supporting an open approach to communication. You need your team members to feel comfortable contributing to the group, so make sure your team is free from damaging communication, like sarcasm and ridicule. People need to be able to take constructive criticism, but if the atmosphere of communication is bad, they'll overlook what's important in the criticism. So, you might have a guideline like avoid remarks that could make a team member feel belittled, ridiculed, or embarrassed. Next, you need guidelines about handling conflict. There's going to be some friction in a team, and it can even be healthy since it pushes teams to resolve differences and work together. You can handle conflict by encouraging compromise, where everybody gets some of what they want, or you can encourage collaboration, where the team tries to find a solution that suits everyone. In some circumstances, confrontation is useful too. You could get to the root of a conflict by encouraging team members to be open and honest about the problem between them. The final area to cover is decision-making. It's up to you as team leader to decide who makes decisions and who'll be accountable for them. And the earlier you do this, the better. You could decide decisions will be based on majority rule or on consensus. Or an expert group might have the final say. Or you could make it clear that the team leader makes the final decision after considering input from the group. Whatever guidelines you set, you as team leader need to set a good example by following them yourself. Then your team will get on board too, and you'll likely have a more productive group as a result.